For Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy both say they had a productive debt ceiling discussion late Monday at the White House, but there was no agreement as the deadline to raise the nation's borrowing limit and avert a potential chaotic federal default looms June 1st. Here's House Minority Leader Democrat Hakeem Jeffries.
Can anyone point to me a single area where extreme MAGA Republicans have moved off of their position in these conversations that are taking place? I can't find a single example.
Divisions remain. Republicans have doubled down demands for spending cuts. Biden's team has offered to hold spending levels flat. The president also wants to increase some taxes on the wealthiest Americans and some large corporations, but McCarthy said early on that's out of the question. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has warned Sudan's rival military generals to abide by the latest ceasefire or face possible sanctions. His statement came as residents reported sporadic fighting today, a day after a new 7-day truce kicked in. Its seventh attempt to stop deadly violence. The United Nations is also calling for parties to honor the pact. Christopher Martinez reports.
A 7-day ceasefire officially began at 9:45 p.m. local time Monday night, but within minutes there were reports of renewed airstrikes and ground combat in and around Sudan's capital city, Khartoum. Volker Perthes is Special Representative of the Secretary General for Sudan.
I call on both to end the fighting and to return to dialogue in the interest of Sudan and its people. Lives and infrastructure have been destroyed. The growing ethnicization of the conflict risks to expand and prolong it.
Perthes described homes and civilian infrastructure destroyed, children subject to sexual violence and abduction, and looting of food and humanitarian supplies. He also warned of the prospect of clashes spiraling into ethnic violence, with tribal militias joining in. Meanwhile, efforts will continue to silence the fighting and also to help Sudan get back on a path toward a democratic government. Rokna Gebeyehu is Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, an 8-nation African trade group.
Let us put our heads and hands together to support the Sudanese people's quest for durable peace and democracy.
I'm Christopher Martinez.
A senior Moscow official is claiming Russian troops and security forces have quashed an alleged cross-border raid from Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry said more than 70 attackers were killed in a battle that lasted about 24 hours. Moscow blamed the raid on Ukraine's military saboteurs. Kiev is saying the incident as an uprising against the Kremlin by Russian partisans. Today marks the first-year anniversary of the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, where a young gunman armed with an AR-15 style rifle killed 19 children and 2 teachers as law enforcement waited more than an hour to breach the classroom where the suspect was holed up as he murdered more children. The school has since been closed and a new one is in the works. A criminal investigation over the hesitant police response at Robb Elementary is still ongoing. Schools in Uvalde will be closed to commemorate the day. Michigan's Democratic governor has signed a new gun control bill into law. Catherine Carley reports.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has signed a new red flag law aimed at keeping firearms away from those at risk of harming themselves or others.
So we must act because week after week in America, we see grim, familiar headlines. Every place you can think of, every situation you can imagine has been shattered by gun violence.
Michigan is now the 21st state with an extreme risk protection law. I'm Catherine Carley for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
A man police believe intentionally crashed a U-Haul truck into a security barrier across from the White House late yesterday has been identified as a 19-year-old suburban St. Louis resident. Video posted by WUSA-TV shows a police officer picking up inventory and several pieces of evidence from the truck, including a Nazi flag. Arizona, California, and Nevada have reached an agreement to reduce their water use some 13% from the drought-stricken Colorado River over the next 3 years. The 3 states agreed to collectively reduce water consumption by 3 million acre-feet of water in exchange for $1 billion in federal aid to entice water conservation. Water advocacy groups say it's a good start but does not go far enough. John Berggren is Senior Regional Water Policy Analyst at Western Resource Advocates in Colorado.
We heard last year from the Department of the Interior that to really protect the system, we need 2 to 4 million acre feet per year going from here on out.
He says overuse and climate change have led to historic lows in the Colorado River, which provides water to some 40 million people in 7 U.S. states, parts of Mexico, and more than 24 Native American tribes. Climate change protesters were dragged away by security guards at oil company Shell's annual shareholder meeting in London after activists tried to storm the stage and shut down the event. The meeting was delayed as dozens of protesters chanted, "Shut down Shell" and "Climate criminals." The activists say Shell and other fossil fuel firms are making record profits at the cost of the environment. And climate and environmental justice activists rallied Sunday at Chevron's Richmond, California refinery ahead of that company's shareholder meeting, demanding the oil giant shut down and stop contributing to air pollution in the community and climate change around the globe.
Chevron, you need to clean up your act. Y'all need to stop profiting off of the destruction of our homelands, of our communities.
They also demanded Chevron pay a multi-billion-dollar settlement for a subsidiary's mass oil pollution in the Ecuadorian Amazon. I'm Christina Onnested, reporting for Pacifica Radio.